The fairy tale didn't just crack, it sounded like a vault door slamming shut as whispers exploded that Archewell Foundation, the glittering symbol of reinvention, is now drowning in questions no glossy PR smile can smooth over. And suddenly the spotlight isn't on red carpets or empowerment speeches, it's on spreadsheets, missing figures, and the kind of financial smoke that makes people start looking for fire. For years, Meghan Markle and Prince Harry sold the world a story. Freedom, impact, a modern humanitarian empire rising from royal ashes. Archewell wasn't just a charity, it was the proof of concept for their entire post-palace identity. The promise was simple. Stripped of royal protocol, they would do more good, faster, louder, better. Now the narrative twisting through insider chats and industry gossip circles sounds very different. Words like discrepancies, irregularities, and unexplained gaps are being tossed around with the kind of nervous energy usually reserved for corporate scandals, not compassion campaigns. And the number floating at the center of the storm? Millions. Not loose change, not rounding errors, the kind of money that makes watchdogs lean forward in their chairs. Sources claim eyebrows started shooting up when reported spending dramatically outpaced incoming donations. In charity math, that's like claiming you're on a diet while ordering dessert twice. Sure, there are explanations, reserves, timing differences, accounting structures, but when the ratio between what comes in and what actually goes out to causes looks lopsided, people talk. And when people talk in the nonprofit world, regulators listen. Enter the looming shadow everyone keeps whispering about, the Internal Revenue Service. No official thunderclap, no public raid, just the quiet, icy rumor that questions have been asked behind the scenes. Whether that turns into anything real is still unknown, but in reputation terms, even the suggestion is dynamite, because charities run on trust. The moment donors start wondering where their dollars actually land, the halo flickers. Behind the scenes, the mood is said to be tense. Not dramatic movie tense, real life tense. The kind where meetings run long, voices drop, and every email feels like it might matter later. Insiders paint a picture of frantic reassurance publicly and nervous recalculations privately. Official lines insist everything is compliant, transparent, properly structured. But if that were the whole story, would the whispers be this loud? What makes it juicier and messier is the timing. This isn't happening during a quiet season. It's unfolding while their media ventures wobble, partnerships thin out, and the fairy tale branding they built starts to look more like a very expensive house of cards in a windy room. Archewell was supposed to be the stable pillar, the moral high ground, the untouchable proof they weren't just celebrities chasing cameras. Now that pillar is the one under a microscope. And then there's the staffing carousel that refuses to slow down. High-level departures, communications people, senior aides, the kind of exits that make industry observers murmur, that's a lot. Every organization has turnover. But when experienced people keep slipping out the side door while leadership insists everything is thriving, the disconnect becomes its own headline. Staff don't usually abandon smooth ships, they leave when the waters feel unpredictable. In private circles, the speculation gets sharper. Some say the operational structure grew too fast, too image-driven, not enough backbone. Others suggest the Sussex brand became so tightly controlled that internal voices stopped feeling heard. Add financial scrutiny to that pressure cooker, and suddenly you've got an environment where even loyal insiders start scanning for the exit sign. Hovering over all of it is the question of credibility. Their whole post-royal narrative leaned on being different from the institution they left, more transparent, more people-focused, less trapped in dusty tradition. If their flagship charity ends up tangled in confusion over money flow, even if it's ultimately explained, the symbolism alone is brutal, because perception moves faster than paperwork. And let's not pretend this exists in a vacuum. Across the ocean, palace walls have ears and reputations matter. Any hint of financial fog around charitable work is the kind of thing that makes royal advisors quietly shake their heads and say, this is exactly what we feared. For King Charles III, already walking the tightrope between family feeling and institutional image, controversy tied to charity isn't just awkward, it's radioactive. Back in California, the pressure reportedly seeps into everything. Business calls, branding decisions, future plans. Because when your moral platform gets questioned, every other venture feels it. A lifestyle brand launch doesn't sparkle the same when headlines mutter about audits. Inspirational speeches land differently when comment sections are arguing about balance sheets. And yet, publicly, the smiles remain. Statements stay stay polished. The message is calm, controlled, forward-looking. But beneath that gloss, the gossip machine is roaring. Is this a temporary storm they can PR their way through? Or the moment the carefully constructed new era image starts to crumble under the weight of numbers that just don't look as pretty as the press photos? Right now, nothing is officially proven, nothing legally declared, just a swirl of claims, denials, and watchful eyes. But in the world of public image, sometimes the question mark does more damage than the answer ever could. Because once people start wondering where the money went, they don't stop. And just when it seems like the storm couldn't get louder, the circle around them starts shrinking in ways that are harder to spin than any headline. In Hollywood, distance is the first sign of trouble. And lately, that distance feels noticeable. Power players who once lined up for proximity are suddenly busy. Meetings get postponed. Calls go to assistants. The glow of being attached to the Sussex narrative isn't blinding anymore, it's risky. Industry whispers say agencies and partners have grown cautious, not cruel, just careful. Because attaching your brand to a couple facing financial question marks tied to a charity isn't edgy publicity, it's potential fallout. In a town built on image management, nobody wants to be the one still holding hands when the music stops. And when representation starts to look complicated, multiple firms, overlapping roles, crisis specialists stepping in, it signals one thing louder than any press release: stabilization mode. Meanwhile, the emotional pressure cooker behind closed doors is said to be reaching boiling point. Not dramatic tabloid theatrics, but the grinding, exhausting strain that comes when every shared project turns into a shared liability. When one interview, one document, one leak could shift the narrative again. Couples can survive public criticism. They can survive career setbacks. But constant reputational siege, that tests even the strongest partnerships. Observers have noticed the subtle shift: more solo appearances, more individual branding, quieter joint messaging. It could be strategic diversification. Or it could be two people slowly realizing that tying every venture, every dream, every public move together might not be the safest play anymore. When survival instincts kick in, even fairy tales start making contingency plans. What makes the situation especially sharp is how deeply their identity is fused with purpose. They didn't just become media figures, they branded themselves as moral voices, impact leaders, change agents. So when the integrity of their flagship charity gets questioned, it's not just a business hiccup. It cuts into the core of who they've presented themselves to be. A film can flop, a podcast can underperform, but a charity controversy, that lingers. Across the Atlantic, the implications stretch even further. Any hope of softening family tensions becomes tangled in optics. Royal life runs on symbolism, tradition, and spotless charitable associations. Even unproven financial clouds around a foundation linked to a royal-born prince make reconciliation conversations infinitely more delicate. It's hard to talk healing when headlines are talking audits. Then there's the collateral damage nobody likes to mention out loud: the causes and communities who partnered in good faith. Charities don't just worry about their own balance sheets, they worry about association. If Archewell's name becomes shorthand for controversy, even temporarily, other organizations may quietly step back to protect their own reputations. No dramatic breakups, just fewer joint announcements, fewer shared stages, slow, polite distancing. Inside the Sussex camp, the strategy now seems to revolve around tightening control. Fewer leaks, tighter messaging, careful appearances. But control is a fragile thing when external forces, regulators, journalists, watchdog groups operate on their own timelines. You can manage tone. You can manage optics. You can't manage when questions come knocking. And those questions have a stubborn way of sticking around. Even if explanations emerge, even if paperwork eventually lines up, the public rarely follows the fine print. They remember the scandal, not the footnote. They remember the suspicion, not the clarification. But reputation damage doesn't need a courtroom verdict. It just needs enough doubt to change how people feel when they hear your name. What's particularly brutal is the contrast between the dream they sold and the reality they're facing. They left a rigid institution to build something freer, more compassionate, more authentic. Now they're entangled in the very kind of scrutiny and skepticism they claimed they wanted to escape, only this time without palace structures to buffer the blow. Independence is empowering until you're standing alone in a storm. There's also the financial reality humming underneath all of it. Foundations, brands, media ventures, they all rely on momentum and belief. If donor confidence dips, if partners hesitate, if audiences grow cynical, revenue streams tighten. And when revenue tightens, every ambitious plan suddenly needs trimming. Big visions get smaller, launches get delayed, expansion turns into consolidation. Still, they haven't disappeared. They haven't retreated into silence, which suggests they believe they can outlast this, reshape the story, pivot again. Reinvention has been their pattern from the start. Actress to duchess, royal to rebel, celebrity to humanitarian. Maybe now they're preparing for another transformation, one that leans less on grandeur and more on survival. But survival isn't the same as triumph. The grand narrative was about changing the world, redefining royalty, building a global impact machine. The current narrative is about damage control, credibility repair, and keeping the floor from dropping out. That's a very different energy. Less spotlight, more shadow boxing, and hovering over everything is the unanswered question that keeps gossip circles buzzing. Is this a temporary reputational bruise, or the moment the Sussex experiment fundamentally shifts from bold reinvention to slow unraveling? Because if the foundation meant to prove their independence becomes the symbol of their instability, then the story flips. The escape from royal life no longer looks like liberation. It starts to look like the first domino in a chain that never stopped falling. For now, the answers sit behind closed doors, in documents, in meetings, in conversations the public will never hear. But the noise outside those doors is getting louder. And in the world of fame, influence, and fragile public trust, sometimes the noise alone is enough to change everything. Enough to change everything. Enough to change everything. Enough